The CORCOM boycott of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Manipur visit. A deep analysis. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's scheduled visit to Manipur has been overshadowed by strong opposition from the Coordination Committee, CORCOM, a collective of 6 prescribed insurgent outfits operating in the state. CORCOM has declared a boycott and imposed a general strike to coincide with Modi's arrival. This move has once again highlighted the unresolved complexities of Manipur's insurgency, the persistent undercurrents of ethnic grievances, and the widening gap between New Delhi's developmental narrative and the ground realities of political discontent in the Northeast. This analysis explores the ideological position of CORCOM, the hardships faced by the Kuki people, and the long history of attempts to displace them from their ancestral lands. The rise of CORCOM. Origins and objectives. CORCOM, or the Coordination Committee, was formed in 2011 as a joint platform of 6 band outfits: the People's Revolutionary Party of Kenglipak, PRIPAK, the Revolutionary People's Front, RPF, political wing of the People's Liberation Army, the Kanle Yawal Kanalup, KYKL, the United National Liberation Front, UNLF, the Kenglipak Communist Party, KCP, and the People's Revolutionary Party of Kenglipak Progressive, PRIPAK Pro. The creation of CORCOM marked an attempt to unite fragmented insurgent groups in Manipur under a common goal: to resist Indian authority and push for their own vision of sovereignty. Their framework has consistently been anti-India, sustained by guerrilla warfare, extortion networks, and alliances with other northeastern and foreign insurgent actors, particularly from across the Myanmar border. Over time, their ideology has also sharpened along ethnic lines, often at the expense of indigenous hill communities like the Kukis. Why boycott Modi's visit? The boycott of Prime Minister Modi's visit is not merely symbolic. It reflects CORCOM's hostility to India's presence in Manipur and its rejection of attempts to restore peace in the state. Their statement outlined several grievances, but in practice, CORCOM's opposition has often translated into destabilizing communities, creating fear, and asserting themselves as the dominant voice of the valley. For the Kuki people, Modi's visit to Lamka represented recognition of their suffering and displacement since the ethnic conflict of May 2023. Yet, CORCOM's boycott was intended to send the opposite message: that the valley-based insurgents still control the narrative of Manipur's politics and territory. The territory of the Kuki people, a historical perspective. The Kuki people, one of the oldest indigenous groups of the hills, have historically inhabited vast tracts of land stretching across present-day Manipur, Mizoram, Nagaland, and into Myanmar and Bangladesh. Their villages, organized in chieftainship systems, were spread across the hill ranges, each settlement maintaining its autonomy, while linked by common ancestry and cultural practices. Colonial records frequently reference the Kukis as a formidable community, known for their resilience, martial spirit, and resistance to external domination. Throughout history, however, the Kukis have faced persistent attempts by other groups to displace or diminish their hold over their ancestral lands. From colonial boundary demarcations to post-independence policies favoring dominant groups, the story of Kuki land has been one of gradual erosion and encroachment. Strategies of land grabbing from Kuki territories. 1. Militant intimidation and violence. Militant groups, particularly valley-based Métis insurgents under the CORCOM banner, have long resorted to intimidation as a method to weaken Kuki settlements. Planting landmines along village routes, ambushing Kuki travelers, and burning houses forced communities to abandon their villages. Once depopulated, such lands became vulnerable to claims by others. 2. Political marginalization. Despite being one of the largest tribal populations in Manipur, the Kukis have often been marginalized politically. Deliberate exclusion from policy decisions, denial of district recognition for Kuki-dominated regions, and manipulation of land laws in favor of valley elites have undermined their ancestral rights. 3. Narrative construction and delegitimization. Another method has been the attempt to delegitimize Kukis as outsiders or settlers, despite centuries of documented presence. Propaganda has been used to portray Kukis as migrants, thereby justifying encroachments on their lands. This erasure narrative not only threatens their territory, but also their cultural identity. 4. Administrative manipulation. Land surveys and revenue records have at times been manipulated to transfer ownership or deny recognition of Kuki villages. This bureaucratic dispossession has left many communities legally vulnerable, unable to claim rights over lands they have inhabited for generations. 5. Ethnic violence and forced displacement. The most direct method has been ethnic violence, where targeted attacks have forced mass displacement. Villages burned, churches destroyed, and fields abandoned created conditions where return was impossible. This not only robbed the Kukis of their homes, but also disrupted their social fabric. Political symbolism. Modi in Lamka versus CorCom's rejection. Lamka, Churachandpur, where Modi is expected to visit, is more than a venue. It symbolizes the endurance of the Kuki people in the face of violence and displacement. For many, his visit is recognition of their hardships and a step toward restoring dignity to communities that have suffered attempts at erasure. CorCom's boycott, however, rejects this narrative and attempts to silence the suffering of Kukis by projecting their anti-India stance as the only legitimate discourse. Broader implications for Manipur. 1. Polarization of public sentiments. The ongoing conflict has entrenched divides between communities. For the Kukis, Modi's visit is a sign of acknowledgement, but for CorCom and its sympathizers, it is seen as a political spectacle. This polarization deepens mistrust and makes reconciliation harder. 2. Security escalations. CorCom's calls for strikes increase the risk of violent incidents. Heightened security responses, in turn, reinforce perceptions of militarization, creating a vicious cycle of fear and control. 3. Displacement and cultural erosion. Beyond physical loss, Kuki displacement represents an attempt to erase their cultural identity tied to ancestral lands. Fields left uncultivated, villages reduced to ashes, and sacred sites destroyed all contribute to a long-term erasure that cannot be measured merely in statistics. 4. Reinforcement of insurgent relevance. Even weakened, CorCom's ability to influence public life through boycotts shows how insurgent narratives continue to overshadow democratic engagement. Their opposition to Modi's visit is less about grievances and more about projecting control over the political space of Manipur. New Delhi's dilemma. For the Modi government, the challenge lies in balancing security with genuine reconciliation. Ignoring CorCom underscores New Delhi's refusal to validate separatist actors, but the persistence of ethnic grievances, particularly among the Kukis, shows that peace cannot be built solely through development projects and military presence. The government must address the long-standing struggles of the Kukis, who have borne disproportionate suffering in recent violence. Without securing their rights and ensuring their return to ancestral lands, peace in Manipur will remain fragile. The AFSPA question. The Armed Forces Special Powers Act continues to frame Manipur as a militarized zone. For Kukis, the FSPA has been a double-edged sword. While sometimes offering protection from insurgent attacks, it has also reinforced the perception of their homeland as a battlefield rather than a place of belonging. Any sustainable solution must revisit this framework and prioritize human security over military control. Regional dimensions. Myanmar factor. The instability in Myanmar has given Bali-based insurgents operational depth. Cross-border sanctuaries enable them to regroup and strike at will. For the Kukis, this dynamic adds another layer of vulnerability, as their trans-border kinship ties are often exploited to justify displacement narratives or allegations of foreign origin. Possible pathways forward. 1. Restoration of displaced communities. Priority must be given to enabling Kuki return to their ancestral villages, rebuilding homes, and restoring livelihoods. 2. Legal safeguards for ancestral lands. Stronger laws protecting tribal lands from encroachment and manipulation must be enacted and enforced. 3. Inclusive dialogue. Genuine peace requires recognizing the voices of all communities, particularly those most affected by violence. 4. Reconciliation framework. Beyond security, reconciliation programs that acknowledge the trauma of displacement and erasure are vital. Conclusion: the CORCOM boycott of Prime Minister Modi's Manipur visit is more than insurgent defiance. It is part of a larger struggle over land, identity, and survival. For the Kukis, history has been marked by repeated attempts to erase them from their ancestral territories through violence, political marginalization, and delegitimization. Modi's visit to Lanka stands as a recognition of their suffering, but the boycott reminds us that powerful forces still resist acknowledging their rightful place in Manipur's history and future. Genuine peace will come only when the rights of the Kukis to live with dignity on their ancestral land are fully restored. Sources consulted: The Wire. Manipur rebel group CORCOM announces boycott of PM Modi's visit, September 2025. Northeast Now. Banned CORCOM calls strike during PM Modi's Manipur visit, September 2025. Hindustan Times. PM Modi's visit to Lanka amid security concerns, September 2025. Economic Times. Manipur insurgency and AFSBA debate, 2024. Observer Research Foundation. Insurgency in Manipur. Historical roots and contemporary challenges, 2023.